right, I'm here. Wonderful. I'm not really one for impromptu singing. I don't have my board today. It's going to be simple, more like a discussion. I hope I remember the words to this song. By the way, early happy Father's Day to those of you that are in here that are fathers. You are most needed, and you're most underappreciated. Between Mother's Day and Father's Day, Mother's Day is a larger day, just in general. Fathers get less, and I would that they would get more because they deserve more. Good fathers are rare. All right. Why should I feel discouraged? And why should the shadows come? Why should my heart be lonely and hope for heaven and for home? When Jesus is my portion, my humble friend is He. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He's watching me. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He's watching me. Whenever I am tempted, whenever clouds arise, when hope gives way to dying, and sight within me just dies, will I draw the closer to Him, and with His love He sets me free. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know You're watching me. So I sing because I'm happy, and I sing because I've been set free. Your eye is on the sparrow, Lord, and I know You're watching me. Amen. Let's pray. Father, I'm glad You're watching us. I'm happy that You know the amount of hair on my head. I don't have a clue the amount of strands, but You know exactly how much are there. Not just for my head, but for every head bowed before You. Grant us Your Spirit. We are nothing without You, absolutely nothing. We are but dust. I don't even understand why Thou art so mindful of us, why You love us this much. I cannot comprehend it, but I accept it as your gift. Teach us. Teach us this more. Let your Spirit come close and teach us. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, great. All right, so I was baptized when I was about 7 years old. And at 7, I loved Jesus. There was no question that I loved Jesus. But while I had an idea of who Jesus was, can you turn on the light for me, Brother? I had an idea of who Jesus was, how to reach him, by prayer, where he lived in a place called heaven. Jesus didn't have a hold of me altogether yet, simply because I didn't know him altogether yet. It would be 10 years later, when I was about 17, that I was truly converted. I remember that first moment of conversion very well. It was the first time that I cried with God. It wasn't the only time that would happen. That'll happen in the life of the Christian over and over again. But it was the first time that had happened to me in a real way, where I knew that God and I had entered into some other type of relationship, and it was can't explain it. It was that kind of a wow moment with me. Between the age of 7 to 17, I went through what I call my Pharisaical stage. Now, this kind of gets people by surprise, but if you've been with Jesus long enough time, he begins to teach you certain things. Everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, maybe I should leave room for a 1%. 99% of all true Christians will go through a Pharisaical stage, where you're a Pharisee. What happens in that stage? Well, during that stage, you think you're better than people. During that stage, you are doing things that are right, but in your own strength. You're succeeding. And the fact that you're succeeding makes you think that you're better than other people, because in reality, you look better than them. In the Pharisaical stage, you do not have as much compassion as you should, because you haven't met God, and God is love. So you don't know how to love altogether. But you're in this stage, and if you stay in this stage and you keep working on your own self-righteousness but watching at Jesus, after a time, he's going to get your attention. And that happened to me at 17. Now, some of you here listening, you might still be in your Pharisaical stage. Part of what I do, I have to discern a lot. When I go about doing the what is man, what is woman, to hell and back, any of my presentations that I do in varying churches, whether here in Guyana or internationally, people ask me, where is your husband? I tell them, I don't have an earthly one. They say, how is it that you know all this stuff? I say, well, I've been married to the Lord for a long time. The principles are the same, but I've been counseling with people since I was a child. So part of what I do is discernment, because in order for me to help people, I have to figure out what's going on with them under what they tell me. So when you meet people, they'll tell you usually a nice version of themselves. And if you go by just that nice version of themselves, then you can't really get to help them. So you have to be able to see under their niceties in order to reach them and in order to show them who they are, in order to help them. When dealing with couples, sometimes couples get very angry at me. So I face some wrath. You say, how can you say that? I said, but isn't it the truth? You're quiet. That's okay. But in doing this, I've had to have an expansion of my mind and my ability to quickly notice things. The reason I say this is because I'm pretty sure that many, I shouldn't say many, again, many, some of you, perhaps many of you, I'm not sure, I don't know all of you personally, I don't have the time, are in your Pharisaical stage. What has that to do with the conclusion of the matter of what is man? I shall tell you in a moment. How to begin? Let's see. Adam sold Jesus Christ for a woman. Samson did the same thing. So did Solomon and David. Zacchaeus was a short man, but he was a thief. So was Jacob. Isaac was a liar, like his father Abraham. Peter had terrible temper issues. He was very proud, and he was overly talkative, especially for a man. Thomas, he was a doubter. He doubted everything, including the fact that Jesus could be risen, possibly. That was also doubtful. The men of God in the Bible failed. I'm going to say that again. The men that God presents in the Bible have great failures. Some of them, they have catastrophe of a disasters, like David and Jacob and Samson. Every man that I mentioned there, though, are all going to heaven. Keep this in your mind, because the What is Man series wasn't done to condemn man. I know right now there's a lot of man bashing going around. There really is. There's a lot of hatred towards men. Men are getting a bad rap. I'm not here to do that so much as to cause men to understand their role, and actually so they can be uplifted to their purpose. Turn your Bibles with me to Isaiah chapter 59. So the book of Isaiah chapter 59. And by the way, if in anything that I do today I step on your toes, please know that you're wearing the wrong kind of shoes. So you need to probably clod your feet with the shoes of salvation. So we're going Isaiah chapter 59, and we are going to go to verse 15 and 16. Verse 15 and 16. When you're there, just say amen, so I'll know that you're there. All right, I hear some of you. It says in verse 15, Yea, truth faileth, and he that departeth from evil maketh himself a prey. And the Lord saw it, and it displeased him that there was no judgment. And he saw that there was no man, and wondered that there was no intercessor. Therefore his arm brought salvation unto him, and his righteousness it sustained him. There was a time when God was looking for a man. He looked around on the earth, and he couldn't find one man. On his way to Calvary, Jesus was also looking for a man. One man betrayed him with a kiss, and as Jesus was going to Calvary, he would see that man fallen from a tree. His neck was broken, and dogs were having a taste of him. The other 11 had all fled. Now listen to what I'm saying. At that moment, when Jesus needed a man, there was no man. All 11 left alive were afraid. They misunderstood what was happening, and they were running for their lives. You heard that, right? I said it twice. Now let me say something else. Those 11 were the first elders of the Christian church that you were a part of. Let me bring that back. You're Christians, right? Those 11 that were running scared were the first elders of your church. Men that are presented in the scripture are not without fault or failure. It's important to understand this, because men, and I know women in here, you can take the same principle, men will often fail. Failure is not a problem. Giving up is. I'm going to say it again. Failure is almost a natural idea in growth. You know, if you see a baby that's growing up, they're going to fall down. If you see a child learning to run, they're going to fall down. The problem only becomes a problem When a child that falls down learning to ride a bicycle says, "Daddy, I don't want to try to learn anymore because I'm getting too many bruises," that child will never succeed. So men, you don't have to fail. Don't get me wrong. We have a high priest that's more than able to keep you from falling and present you before the throne of God with exceeding joy. However, you probably will fail. Your problem, again, is not in the failing. The problem is when you sit on the ground and stay there, refusing to get up. Learn the lessons and keep moving. Now I'm going to share 2 slides first, and these are important slides. If men placed at the head of a mission have not firmness of principle that will preserve them from every vestige of commonness and unbecoming familiarity with young girls and women, after the light which has been so plainly given, let them be discharged without a second trial. Now I'm saying this because this is important in the church today. This is one of those things that you don't get a second trial at. As a man, if you have problems with women, the first thing God says, get a wife. To avoid fornication, let every man get his own wife. If you make a mistake with the women in the church, which I have seen pastors do, I've been to creeks where I've seen elders playing with the young girls and they're married, playing with them in a way that they should not be playing with them, because you know you can do all kinds of things, especially under our brown water here in Guyana. That kind of thing is a sin to which if you commit it, you should never get a second trial. So if an elder or pastor is found having committed adultery, he should never again have the name elder or pastor. Now that doesn't mean that you can't be a Christian, but you can't be a leader in that capacity. Leaders, listen to me, men. Leaders must be above board. When we were first starting Hidden Man Ministries, we had some young men come from Seventh Adventist Church in town. They were friends of ours. They were young men, and most young men that you find in the Adventist Church, they are unstable because they have one foot in the world and one foot in the church. If this sounds like you, it's all right. They would tell us like this: the elders can't tell me what to do. Why? Because we know their secrets. What kind of secrets? Who they're with, who they like, etc., etc. They would even tell us about the pastors that way. Yeah, the pastors in this very Seventh Adventist conference. So the young people had their rap. So they can't tell us anything to do, because as far as the young people were concerned, they were better than them. Men, if you're going to be men, you need to be above board. Let no man be able to point the finger at you to say that you were involved in anything like this. That man is not fit to stand as the head of his wife, who does not realize his obligations to God to purify himself even as he is pure, and to present his body to God a living sacrifice. If he enervates his system by base earthliness and corrupt practices, how can he present his body a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God? The husband who stands as the head of his wife, as Christ stands at the head of his church, who loves his wife as he loves his own body, and cherishes and nourishes her as Christ the church, will not act in a way to destroy either his own powers or the powers of his wife. A man must be pure. When does a man start practicing purity? From a child. The amount of young men that I have found that have been involved in pornography and masturbation, and they're struggling with it even into adulthood, some of them struggling with it even when they're married. Sister White writes that masturbation is a harder addiction to overcome than alcoholism. It's rough. So how do you overcome that? How do you overcome pornography? Men should not have anything to do with this. Nothing at all. I've spoken to men in marriage situations that have so degraded their minds in pornography that they want their wives to do what they see on the screen. Now, let me just say, women that are trained in pornography, so pornography stars, they work at being extraordinarily flexible, extraordinarily beautiful, extraordinarily able, and your wives probably don't have all that extraordinary. And that's all right. That's who you married. That's okay. So take it easy. Take it easy. We must learn to have balance. I've met wives that really dislike sexuality with their husbands because their husbands are a little bit of beasts. By the way, I've met husbands that have a problem with their wives because their wives are a little bit of beasts. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that we have to learn balance. And we can't take what should happen in our bedrooms from Nicki Minaj or whoever these folks are, because I feel that music now is just straight pornography, a lot of it. You can't take that example of what should be, because that's not it. Men need to be pure. Now let's get into this discussion this morning. In order to do this series, I had to talk to a lot of men. I've been talking to men all my life because I tend to generally like men more than women. I explained that in the What is Woman kind of series. And so I have a lot of male friends. I know some people say you can't have male friends. I don't believe the hype. I believe that you can have male friends. They're just male friends. That's all they are, just friends. And I asked a section of them 5 questions. And we're going to let them speak, because what they have to say about what a man is and what he should be, I thought was interesting. Now, I thought that in my mind, I was thinking all men are the same. But y'all are not the same. All y'all are different right in this room. What bothers you and affects you is completely different from the other man. You're actually very unique, even though you have certain commonality, which we talked about as being guide, guard, and giver. So we're going to look at a series of questions and see what we can get from it. What would make a man less than a man? That was the question. G said, having controlling wife. We talked about this in the What is Woman, so I won't touch on it again. K said low self-esteem, and a woman who does not support him where he needs help. This is a problem. I meet a lot of men with low self-esteem. Now, first of all, let me just tell you that low self-esteem is not a Christian word. It's a worldly word, so people go to these beautiful, like hype yourself up things where they're told that they need to have a good self-esteem. Having a good self-esteem just means that you have like a great ego and that you're really selfish. The word that God used is having a good self-worth. Having a good self-worth. So the question is, what is a man worth? Now let me ask you a question. If Brother Dell has a son, Duel, and I had a son, his name is Sam. And let's say that Brother Duel's son had to die, but my son didn't have to die. We were in some sort of a scenario where Duel would have to die, but my son and me, we're good. But I look over Duel and I look over Brother Dell and I say, Sam is going to die in place of Brother Duel's son. In that moment, who do I value the most? Duel or my son Sam? Answer the question. In the moment, I have to choose between letting my son die and letting Duel die. And I said, Duel will live. My son Sam will die. Who do I value most in that moment? Duel, the one that I let live. When God gave his son, listen to me, friends, he valued you more than Jesus. Let me say it again, maybe in a different way. In God's eyes, you are of more value than Jesus Christ. Now that's a crazy thought, but it's a true thought. God says, esteem others better than yourself. That's exactly what Jesus did. He esteemed you better than himself. The Father esteemed you better than his son. So if you're looking at a man in terms of what he's worth Jesus Christ. But Sister White add to that, she said he's worth Jesus Christ and eternity. That's another sermon. So a man should have high self-worth. He shouldn't go around with bent shoulders. He shouldn't walk around like this. He should walk around like if he's a prince of the Most High God. Neglects his family, especially his children. The Bible says such a one that does that is worse than an infidel. C, refusal to take care of family. So taking care of the family in the minds of these men was, very up there. Not being masculine, which is a thing today. We cannot be masculine. We can be very feminine as men. Now let me just say something, because I know some men that are feminine. They're not gay. Just so you know, not all men that are a little feminine. That doesn't mean they're gay. Some men just their mothers were really stressed when they were in the womb, and they came out with a little hormonal imbalance, so their voices didn't break into like a really good bass. And so they're still kind of like having this kind of voice even in adulthood. And they're kind of a little weird. That doesn't mean they're gay, just so you know. A lack of honesty. Honesty is always the best policy. Not saying I am sorry. This is imagine one of the men told me that this makes a man less than a man. I began by saying, there was a fellow in the Bible, he was very proud. He was full of himself. In fact, he had a good self-esteem. And whenever the master would ask questions, he would be the first one to answer. You know that fellow, right? He was a fisherman. His name was Peter. And I remember the Bible records that one time, he was really, really full of himself. And he said, Lord, do all of these forsake you? I will go to you to the death. He had his sword ready. He was ready. He was ready to fight for Jesus. What he wasn't ready to do was die for him. And I remember as the story went, the cock crew, and he denied the Lord. And he didn't only deny him like, I'm not with that man. He denied him with much cursing. So the people were sure that one day, he wasn't with Christ, not really. I remember, though, the story didn't finish there. It continues that he found the spot where his master was. He knelt on his knees. He began to cry. And he said, I am sorry. He was converted for the first time in his life, and Peter was different. In fact, the next time the Jews would see him, they would wonder, is that the same guy? So I am sorry makes a man more. It's not a sign of humiliation. It's actually a sign of an uplifted mind. When he thinks expressing his emotions makes him soft. Do we have any men in this room that think that when you express emotions, it makes you soft? Just so you know, Jesus Christ was a man's man. He cried in public. Just so you know. A man that is a coward, definitely. Indecisive, can't make decisions. Lacking confidence and easily persuaded. We talked about some of those things. Man is guide. Not willing to learn. This is a problem. We never stop learning. There's never any graduation. You graduate into another school, and you graduate into another school, and you just keep doing like that after the rest of your life. Never ends. And finally, we're going to graduate into heaven, and we're just going to keep going. Learning forever. Can't take initiative or make himself useful for others. Abusing women, one man said. Abusing women. Do we have any women abusers in this church? I don't know your past. I've met men, though, that have hit women. And they've told me that. And some of them have told me the reasons why they... when we've done something that we're not sure about that it's right, we want to have somebody say, you're right. Those 3 words are the words that every woman wants to hear, one friend told me. So I had some male friends tell me about why they, hit women. One man told me he hit his wife once, he slapped her. He said, I just did it once. I said, why you slap your wife? He said, she was flirting with another man. And when he talked to her about it, her response was indolent. It made him feel disrespected, and he slapped her. He regretted it. He told her he was sorry. I know other men that have done much more harm than slapping their wives. I've met men that have raped their wives, and all sorts of things that I deal with in my life's work. The man that thinks in order to correct a woman that is grown, he needs to use force, has not learned how to control his own self. That's all that means. And such a one really should never take a wife. If you beat a wife, and I know some women that have been beaten all their lives, they're 50-something, 60-something now. They were married when they were late teens, early 20s. What happens to them is that the woman loses her individuality and she becomes almost an animal. Not an animal in the bad way, but an animal in becoming unable to have her own individuality, to move, to even think beyond what she's in. It is for that reason that many women that are abused stay in the relationship, and you're wondering, why doesn't she just leave him? It's because allowing herself to be treated like an animal has created an animal-like idea where she is enslaved to the man. This is called the Napoleon syndrome. Anyway, pride, arrogance, self-sufficiency, looking down on others, not knowing weaknesses. By the way, the category of men that I asked are in the church, out the church. They're white men, they're black men, they're Hispanic men. They're men that really love Jesus, they're men that are half and half, and they're men that don't know Jesus at all, because I asked atheists. You can guess which answers are coming from the really kind of godly type. But I thought that they were all essential. This one was funny. This part of the conversation was hilarious. What are the most irritating things women do in your opinion? One man said they think that they know more than you. Highly irritating. He said they don't understand the value of money. Just let me stop here. Men, for those of you that aren't married, when you're about to pick the girl that you're going to get married to, choose the one that you can afford. Let me say that another way. Some men try to go after like the best looking woman in the village who has, she's nails done, hair done, she looks good. Ask yourself the question, can I afford her? If you can't afford her, leave her alone, because she will, even if she goes with you, find somebody that can afford her after. A man must learn to buy from the market of women that which he can afford, take care of, look after, that which will make practical sense, or you will find yourself in problems, because some women do not understand the value of money, and instead of eating bake and whatever, you're going to be eating less. Eating less. Because she's going to want to look a certain way. Not being thoughtful or caring, and being disrespectful. So what does disrespectful look like? For every man, this is different, and for couples, this is different. I've talked to a lot of couples, and the same disrespect does not translate from couple to couple. What I've gotten, though, is that most men do not like to be told certain things in a certain way when people are around, for example. So if your husband is ready to go, there's one car, and I always say get two modes of transportation, just makes life easier. But let's say you have one car, your husband is ready to go, you're talking with your friends, and he comes, and he gives you a signal from afar like this, or, something. He gives you a signal. Not everybody sees it, but maybe a few people see it, but it was okay. The signal just says that he wants to go. And instead of quietly getting up and looking back at him or just telling him, give me 5 more minutes, or, something in the corner, you go in front of all of your friends and say, I ain't able to go right now. You got to wait. Don't do that. It seems a small thing, right? It seems like a really small thing. Listen to me. Don't do that. Not necessarily she might find her way home. Little things add up. They add up. And after a while, that man becomes so that he's tired of you. This is a bad thing. You don't want your man to be tired of you. A man that's tired of you, you must remember, there are always women trying to get your man. I'm not joking. There are always women trying to get your... And the more nice your man is to you, the more the women like your man. And so, be careful, ladies, how you treat your man. Be very careful. Nitpicking and gossiping. One man said to me, when I asked this question, he said, this is it. He said, I've worked in so many different islands. I've worked in the US, I've worked in Guyana. He said that all the time, these women, he's a nurse, he's a male nurse. He said, The female nurses in the ward, they're always getting some trouble, some problem because somebody talked about somebody, something, this thing drives him nuts. This one was funny. Expecting a man to know what they're thinking or what they want them to do without asking. Just so you women know, men are not telepathic. They cannot look into your mind and say, aha, she really wants me to pick up bread. No, if you don't tell the man to pick up bread, he will come home without it and you will just have butter. So please make sure that you tell men what you want. Tell them what is bothering you. Tell them, they will not know. By the way, this translates into the bedroom. Don't expect your man to know that you're not having pleasure in the bedroom, that whatever he's doing is not satisfactory, not telepathic. You need to tell him what you want there in the kitchen and everywhere else. Communication is key. Complaining, gossiping, checking a man's phone. Does anybody do that here? Now, by the way, if you committed adultery and your wife took you back and she wants to check your phone, you should let her do it. Listen to me. If you committed adultery and your wife took you back and she feels insecure because that was a mistrust, but she took you back, she's trying again, you let her check anything, phone, pockets, and you just make sure that you're clean and good to go. After a while, she'll begin to feel comfortable again and she'll stop doing that. But I've met a lot of women that are, in my opinion, I say they're crazy. So I meet a lot of crazy women. I'm not kidding you. I meet a lot of diagnosed crazy women. And they do a lot of crazy things. So I had one guy who was one woman, and he came and he told me, she's always jealous. And if he talks to a girl, she's so jealous. And she'll come after him and she doesn't even know, but it's like she's really, really jealous. And when he told me that, I said, look, get rid of her. That's what I told him. I told him, get rid of her. You can't afford to be with someone that is not comfortable in their own skin, and that if you talk to a girl just normally, she's losing it. I mean, what are you going to talk to for the rest of your life? Just boys? You see some signs a far way off, and when you see those kinds of signs, turn right. Why? I was talking to one friend of mine, a good friend of mine. He got married, and he was really in love with his wife, but his wife was jealous. She was always jealous. He knew that, but he still loved his wife, and so he married her. And a year later, he told me they're having problems. I said, what kind of problems are you having? He said, she thinks I'm cheating on her. I said, okay, this is a good thing. I said, is it true? Are you cheating on her? He said, no. I said, are you sure you're not cheating on her? Because I know him, right? He said, Latoya, when I decided to get married, I was finished with all of that. I'm not cheating on her. He said, you've spoken to her about it? I said, yeah. I told him, let me talk to her. And I did. I spoke to her. And she was really jealous. And it didn't matter what I said or he said or whoever said. In her mind, she believed he was cheating on her. In a few months, they were divorced. He's now with somebody else. He has a child, and he will marry this person. Who lost? She did. Simply because she was very, very jealous. That being said, men, be careful. I know some men have been promiscuous before. So they've been with Shelly Ann and Sharianne and Sharina and all the other S's in the alphabet. And when they've finally gotten married, they still have some leftover, playerism. So while they're not cheating, when they meet girls, they talk to them like if they like them, and they don't even know they're doing it. So they're just Don Juans, I guess. They have some of that James Bond thing going on with them. And girls like that, and so that puts your wife in a position where you're not cheating, you don't even know what you're doing, but it's causing her to feel a little bit insecure. That you need to talk about. Flirting, there you go. Unable to think for themselves and talkative. Some women are too talkative. I've met some women that go like this. Woo! Non-stop. In fact, one couple, I was talking to another much older chaplain He's been counseling people for many, many years. He's 86. He's 86 this week. And he told me about a couple that he once dealt with. He said, I'm looking at them, I'm talking with them, and the woman doesn't even give him a chance to tell his side of the story. She doesn't give him a chance. And it began to irritate him as a counselor because he couldn't help, because she just wasn't allowing it. As soon as he asked a question, she would answer. Don't do that. Don't do that. If you need to count the time, I can take 5 minutes, you take 5 minutes. Learn how to balance time. Sometimes we don't know what we're doing, but it can be very, very irritating. Controlling, telling me what I should or should not be interested in. Nobody has a right to tell anybody what they should and should not be interested in. Nobody. I didn't even know women did this. I said, women do that? I said, yes. They tell us what we should and should not be interested. Like, you shouldn't go down there. Why? Because I said so. I mean, please. Criticizing. One man said, as long as you're criticizing me, you don't do it well. You can't do this. I can't believe how you do this. You do this. It's stupidness you're doing. Irritating, irritating. Wanting everything but not willing to give. Flirting, complaining, again, speaking rudely, gossiping, flirting, bringing up things that has been addressed already. Women, and we talked about this in terms of the mind, how the mind takes this obsessive kind of thinking. Because women are this way, they tend to dredge up past buried things, especially when they get angry, because when they get angry, their box is open. So whatever has been done 5 years ago, the box flings it out. He did that. And in an argument, they will bring up things from the past that you already dealt with. We buried it. Please, friends, let it sleep. Let it sleep. This is most irritating. And by the way, that kind of thing will... Words affect the thoughts. Thoughts affect the actions. Listen to me. Words affect the thoughts. Thoughts affect the actions. So, let me give you an example. Your man slept with Bianca whilst he was down in Ramadan, wherever that is. And he came home, and somebody told you they saw him coming out of Bianca's house at 5 in the morning. And so you confronted him. Shelly said you were coming out of Bianca's house, and she saw you 2 times at 5 o'clock. What you were doing there? And your poor husband, because he's guilt-ridden, because he's a Christian, but he failed, he says, honey, I am sorry. The girl came after me when I was in the village. And I don't know, you were far away and I wasn't thinking of whatever he tells you, right? He is legitimately sorry. Okay, you guys decide. We're gonna figure this out. I don't really like sorry, and I don't really like this, and I don't, the woman is significantly hurt. But she said, God believes in reconciliation instead of separation, so I'm going to try. So she tries. And after 7 years, her husband is good as gold, solid as a rock. He's never given her even the thought to think that he was with somebody else. She's perfectly secure. But he goes out and he does something. Who knows what he does? He does something and he makes a mistake. Not that kind of mistake, something else. And she's, I don't know, hormonal or something. And she's angry. And in that moment, out opens the box 7 years ago. And out of the box flies out. You remember when you went with Bianca? And I went home here cooking and looking after you and all these things, and then you Bianca. And little does she know that Bianca in Ramadan still likes her husband. Now, every time she brings up Bianca, he's already put Bianca in a box and put her in the ground and buried her. But when she brings it up, Bianca jumps in his mind. She just triggered the memory. And he remembers Bianca. She was in that red dress. She looked kind of nice. In fact, Bianca's legs were better than this one's legs for real. Bianca had that nice, Who did that? I'm not joking. Who just did that to him? She did that to him. Now, if he walks out of the house and goes to Ramadan side and sees Bianca again, the box that he already buried, she resurrected. I'm not joking. You know this happens, right? I'm not joking. This happens. Because words affect the thoughts that affect the action. So what is buried, please, friends? Let it stay buried. What is the best thing a man can do for his children? All of the guys give me such good answers. All the answers were very similar. Spend time, spend time. It was very particularly keep promises, show courage, teach them how to deal with things in adulthood, demonstrate to them what they should be. All the guys, I was like, theoretically, men really know how to raise children. Theoretically, I don't know if they're doing that practically, but theoretically, they have it locked. So I'm not going to go through this because it was all very, very similar. What is the worst thing that can happen to a man? This was interesting. So for many men, many of them were not sure because they had never given such questions thought. So one man said to lose his wife or kids. Now I meet a lot of women that have had miscarriages, and some women that I've met that have had miscarriages are, how to explain that? They're broken in ways that I really can't understand because I've never had that experience. They're grieving. So I had one woman, her baby was born. She carried it about 8 months, and then the baby came out and was stillborn. And she named the baby. And then they got a coffin and they buried the baby. And she couldn't get past this loss of the baby. And it actually kind of crippled who she was and who she should be. And her husband didn't altogether know how to deal with this because whilst he was dealing with his own loss because he wanted a child, it wasn't being demonstrated in the way that she was demonstrating it. And so losing a wife or child, again, men different. So some men that have lost their wives, they want to get married again right away, like 6 months later. And you're thinking, they didn't really they didn't love their wives. Don't think that. That's not why they're doing it. They're doing it because their coping mechanism is to replace you. Replacing you does not mean that they didn't love you. Has nothing to do with that. It's just the way that they're dealing with surviving the pain. And so we mustn't take things so personally. Some men losing their children, it really affects them in a way that I can't understand because I've never had that experience, but I've seen men that are being really affected by the loss of their children, as much as any woman. Not have moral, physical, or mental strength, and this is because it will cause you not to be able to fulfill your duties. Losing your family, losing sexual function. By the way, veterans the world over, so those soldiers that have been to war, have said repeatedly they would rather lose their legs than lose the functioning capacity of their genitals. So a man's sexuality is key to who he is. Lose your children, again, that came up quite a lot with this. This was interesting, regret. One man said the worst thing that could happen is regret. He went on to say that if you needed to say you were sorry for something, but the person died before you were able to do it, this is one of the worst things that could happen to a man. He said dying before your time, a sentence to life so that you're in prison and you can't see your children grow up. You can't be a part of their lives. One man said to give up. I like that. The worst thing that can happen to a man is to give up. I had a friend, and he was a missionary friend, a very godly man, but he was struggling with masturbation. By the way, this is a common struggle for many men and women within the Adventist church and within churches all around. So just so you know, you're not alone, and it's not unique, nor is it new, nor does God think you're evil. God is accustomed to dealing with us and getting us where we need to go. And so this young man, he was struggling with masturbation, and we were talking, and he said, Latoya, it was like this, right? What was I going to do? He said, I felt like I was swimming a river, so I'm crossing over from one bank to the next. But every now and again, I would drink water and go down. He said, so there were two options for me. It's either I'm going to keep swimming or I'm going to drown. He said, which one was I going to do? I just keep swimming. He's like, keep swimming. And he kept swimming until finally he had overcome masturbation. He never gave up. Very simple, right? Very simple. One other person said, by the way, it's you because it's unknown. So the person's name doesn't begin with you. Being betrayed. One man that I know, he was his best friend since he was a child. Went with his child mother, whom he was still not with, but maybe trying to be with. But she used to treat him badly. Anyway, his best friend ended up with a woman. He didn't know that it was happening. So by the time he found out, their relationship was already a thing. And he was so hurt. Not by her, because he wasn't really with her, but he was thinking maybe to try it because they had a child together, right? Try it again. But by the best friend. He was so hurt by the best friend. First of all, he stopped eating for 30 days. Then when he started eating, he ate like a pig. So he went from being skinny to being fat overnight, which was very hard on his organs, and right now he has some health issues. And then he became so that he couldn't function properly. He wasn't sleeping. He was consumed by revenge. He said, Latoya, I could hurt them, and I really want to hurt them. And then he looked at me and he said, how do you forgive? So betrayal can be the worst thing that happens to a man. Betrayal by a woman. You all are reading in the papers how many men are killing women. And now the women are killing them. How the world it turns, right? Betrayal. Put in a situation where he cannot fulfill his responsibilities, whether through tyranny, disability, or shock or loss. Sustain some injury or disease, again, that prevents him from fulfilling his responsibilities of working, earning, providing. Losing self-worth or manhood. Or, listen to this one, basing his manhood on what he thinks of himself or what others think of him instead of what God thinks of him. I meet a lot of people like that. They're more concerned about what other people say. Displaces thoughts in their minds which are very self-destructive. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I can never do this. I'm so stupid. This will never happen to me. Instead of what God is saying, you're my son. You can do it. I believe in you. I've died for you. Come on, let's go. Losing his soul, losing hope, losing faithfulness to God. And the last one. What factors contribute to men being less than ideal? So less than ideal. Oh, one man when I asked me just said life. Life does it to you. And then he said, if you don't have a good income, this is very, very important. So I have a friend. He's really a good friend. And, I tell him, you're happy if you're doing what you love. He said, no, I'm happy once I got money. It's like, I got money, I'm happy. He says money is the answer for all. Every time we're talking, he's not Guyanese, every time we're talking, and I'm talking to him about getting married or a guy I met or something, he says, is he a millionaire? That's what his answer to it all is just having money. Now, this is partly amusing, but it's partly true, because a man that has a good income feels confident in his ability to guard, guide, and give. A man that cannot get a good income, or he's a low income kind of man, where he can't give his wife the things that he knows she needs and she wants, it makes him feel less than what he should be. And this is not necessarily a bad thing. What it should do is spur him on to being able to learn how to get a good income. And one of the ways that you learn to do that, if you aren't doing it yet, is that you pray. Prayer is a science, and you say, Lord, teach me how to make money. God knows a cattle upon 1,000 hills are his. Loss of spirituality, societal pressures, blurring of gender roles, pressure to succeed. So, let me go down, because he said the same thing. Putting themselves ahead of people. So as long as you put anything in front of God, you're going to lose it. Let me say that again. If you put anything in front of God, after a while you're going to lose it. Whether it's your job, your wife, your child, God is going to remove the thing from you. And sometimes he removes it by death, but it's going to happen to you. If you refuse to honor your obligations, or you refuse to accept what you have done. Some men, so I know one man who's a drunk. I know several men who are drunks. I mean legitimate alcoholics. They drink all day. The reason they do this is because they have not accepted the evil that they did as children. They tried to molest their sisters. They killed some people. Can't tell you all that stuff. And they did other things that have left them with guilt. They don't know how to deal with it, how to accept it, to say, I was this monster, but I am no longer this monster. It's okay. Some of us, some men, they're monsters. I think all kinds of things are okay because I deal with all kinds of people. And I meet people that used to be monsters and people that are monsters still. You know, people that raped girls when they were 7 and 5. Yeah, I meet them. What do you do with them? You are a monster. Get away. No. Jesus died for them too. Jesus died for them too. And can you go from being a monster to not being a monster? Of course you can. Look at Manasseh in the Bible. And so, but part of it is accepting what you have done. You have to be able to take responsibility. I killed John Brown when I was 15. Okay. Now we can move on from that. You know, whatever it is you've done, whatever. Some people do all kind of evil things. Not knowing what he wants. I meet men all the time that don't have a clue what they want. They tell you one thing today, another thing tomorrow, something else the next day. No, it's not things change. It's just that they really don't know what they want. A man will learn to know what he wants. 1, if he had good examples in childhood. 2, if he has a good example in the present moment. And 3, if he takes his example from Jesus Christ. Example is what men need in order to know what they want. Has no purpose, values, principles, unmotivated, or bringing ignorance, liking the easy way. Some men do that, right? They like the easy way. People pleaser, unwilling to deal with challenges. Is a problem? Let's turn around. Once we meet a problem, let's turn around. No. You meet the bridge, and the bridge is broken halfway. A good man is thinking, how can we still cross the bridge? Maybe if I get a rope there and think this, so we can put this, we can put... You gotta think about it, figure it out, cross the bridge. Models and critics that you grew up with, again, family, community. Now we have social media, and we have celebrities, and people are looking at all stars and these things on Facebook and going like, oh, I wish I was like her. I wish I looked like this one. Friends, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter is all fake. Just let me say that again. It is fake, unreal. People be looking like, I'm so in love with you on Facebook. In reality, like, get away from me. That's the reality. So please don't believe in that. Please don't follow that. Interesting. Men are taught that aggression and violence are prime qualities and you have to be ready to fight or else you are perceived as weak. I spoke in GAR that men need to learn how to fight. However, fighting is not the first resort, it's the last resort. But men have been taught, you know, I've seen mothers, let a boy alone, let him cry. He can't be a sissy. Y'all seen that? Yeah, they've told him, this kind of gay kind of thing. Y'all never seen that? I've seen mothers. In order to protect our men from becoming gay, we will make sure that they are rough, coarse, that they can fight, and that they're just toughing it. When you do that now, you have not developed the softer qualities of the man. You make him unbalanced. Please, no. Men must learn that it's okay to cry, but that they must have enough integrity to be able to stand as well. It must be balanced. Parental upbringing, value system, ambition. Ambition can cause a man to do foolishness. False concepts of true manhood, which we have been indoctrinated in through school, through institutions, even through the church, of what a man should be. We don't know. And of course, not knowing your Bible is a thing. So, what's the conclusion of the whole matter? I think men are not so bad. My conclusion is that men are not so bad. Men are beautiful, complicated, unique. They're needed. They're needed. For those of you men that have felt unappreciated here, and it's possible to be a young man in your home and still feel unappreciated, like if nobody understands you. You can't communicate well with somebody because you didn't have a father that knew how to, nobody taught him. just know that God appreciates you.
Amen.
If you have women in your lives and those women are in the hearing of my voice, please appreciate your men. So tomorrow, maybe for Father's Day, you can buy him a rose too. Why not? I mean, figure out what it is that he wants and let him have some fun. By the way, men need to have fun. Even when they're old, they still want to have fun. One man told me there's no difference between a 19-year-old man and a 95-year-old man. They all like cars and girls. So appreciate them and help them to be more, because God would have them to fulfill their purpose in being sons of himself, reflectors of his glory. And the world can be a better place, at least starting with us, until we get off this planet. Well, hopefully the Lord is looking around now for men, and in this church he can say, I got some. Amen.